Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another video on my channel, Hairliciously. If you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to subscribe so you guys are updated on hair loss and hair transplant topics, as well as updates on current hair loss treatments in the pipelines. Visit my website at hairliciously.com to purchase your microneedling device, which is scientifically proven to stimulate hair growth, my low-level laser therapy cap, the HD blocking shampoo and serum, hair growth vitamins, and a few other products to help those who are losing hair. So in today's video, I wanted to discuss about something strange and interesting that I've been reading in the hair loss community regarding hair loss sufferers who have claimed to be drinking liquid minoxidil. So yes, this one right here is liquid minoxidil for the treatment of androgenic alopecia. And as you guys know, this topical application for minoxidil is intended to be used on the scalp topically to act as a growth stimulant. But strangely enough, there are reports of people posting on Reddit and various hair loss forums who have claimed to be drinking the liquid version in hopes of getting better results than its topical counterpart. This mainly stems from the fact, I think, that taking minoxidil orally has a much better efficacy in terms of regrowing hair, because as far as the oral tablet is concerned, it gets metabolized directly in the liver, it enters the bloodstream, and it bypasses having minoxidil converted into minoxidil sulfate. I've covered a previous video where if you lack that certain sulfotransferase enzyme required to convert minoxidil into minoxidil sulfate, you're most likely not going to be a good responder to topical minoxidil. And we know that minoxidil in itself, when applied topically, is actually very poorly absorbed. There are studies that show like less than 2 to 3% of what is applied topically actually gets absorbed, and the rest is just wasted. Not a whole lot of people actually see decent results anyway. So some users actually make the switch to oral minoxidil, in hopes of achieving better regrowth. And I've also dived into the topic on the before and after results of oral minoxidil. And it's crazy to see how some people respond to the point where even finasteride may not even be used due to the fact that, the hair growth potential is far greater, and it also offsets the effects DHT has on maturizing hair. From my research, most people seem to be ingesting the Kirkland brand from Costco, minoxidil 5%, as it only contains minoxidil, purified water, alcohol, and PG. There are other generic minoxidil brands that contain other ingredients that may be harmful if it's actually ingested orally. But the one from Costco, from Kirkland, it actually doesn't really contain any harmful chemicals. The only thing that it does have is PG, which is known to be an irritant, and it can cause things like gastrointestinal irritation. It can cause, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. But the most lethal ingredient in minoxidil in itself is the topical 5% minoxidil solution. Based on calculations, a topical 5% minoxidil solution contains 50 milligrams per 1 milliliter. And so with each 1 milliliter minoxidil dropper, it contains about 24 to 25 drops. The ideal amount for those who are ingesting the topical minoxidil is to use about 2 to 3 drops only, because that would be equivalent to about 4 to 6 milligrams of minoxidil. And this is based on the typical oral minoxidil dose of 5 milligrams that is prescribed off-label for the treatment of hair loss. And not surprisingly, there are studies and literature on individuals who have accidentally overdosed on ingesting topical minoxidil, and they ended up requiring, medical attention. And this was mainly because of ingesting, minoxidil in large quantities, which would aggravate symptoms like hypotension, tachycardia, which could easily be life-threatening, especially if you have pre-existing conditions. And you have to realize that even a small 1 milliliter solution, which is probably no more than, like a teaspoon, contains 50 milligrams of minoxidil, which is like 10 times more than the typically, prescribed oral dose. So even for people who are not prone to side effects, really need to be careful when considering ingesting topical minoxidil, because I feel like a few extra drops can really cause damage. So there was a 1989 study regarding a 36-year-old man who had ingested topical minoxidil solution, and within 2 hours he exhibited tachycardia and hypotension after ingesting an estimated 1,000 milligrams, which is an insane amount of minoxidil. Dopamine was required for 2 days to maintain his blood pressure. A Swan-Ganz catheter measurements demonstrated an increased cardiac output and decreased systemic vascular resistance. There was another 1999 study that talked about another overdose of topical minoxidil 5% solution, which resulted in, once again, hypotension, required vasopressor support, intubation, prolonged tachycardia, and fluid overload with pleural effusions, requiring several days of therapy with furosemide. And the last example I want to share with you regarding a 7-year-old girl who ingested less than a teaspoon of topical minoxidil, and she was hospitalized with a dangerously fast heart rate and low blood pressure that lasted until the next day. Her blood pressure on admission at the hospital was 86/56 and then plummeted to 73/33 at one point. And given that topical minoxidil is, over the counter, it's readily available, this is something that can be accessible to anyone, unlike oral minoxidil, which would require a doctor's prescription, to be used off-label. So it can be a very dangerous medication, as we've seen in some of the examples, especially if it's been ingested beyond the therapeutic dosage it is normally prescribed. Now, I personally would not recommend anyone to be ingesting topical minoxidil for obvious reasons. And even when I get people, asking about oral minoxidil, I am a little bit more on the cautious and reserved side because it does mess around with your blood pressure and particularly your heart, which really isn't something that you guys want to be really experimenting with. Especially if you're prone to side effects or if you have pre-existing heart conditions. And the other thing is that we don't know how well ingesting topical minoxidil would be for hair growth because, there are no studies on this. And given that we already have an oral tablet form for those who want to ingest, minoxidil, there really is no really a good reason for you guys to be ingesting oral minoxidil, at least topically. But I will say that oral minoxidil works wonders for a lot of people who aren't good responders to the topical application for minoxidil, and even for individuals who respond to topical minoxidil can sometimes see hyper results because of just how well oral minoxidil is absorbed systemically. As far as drinking the topical, I'm honestly not sure how well people respond and how well it will be absorbed into the system. There was a guy that I read about who left a comment on Reddit. He was taking the equivalent of about 2.5 milligrams of topical minoxidil twice a day for 3 months. Sublingual, which is directly under the tongue, and has stated that he gained a half inch of terminal hair back on his temples, and that all of his vellus hairs have grown from 1 to 2 millimeters to 1 centimeter. His crown, however, was still the same with no new growth, but he did notice faster body hair growth. Facial hair seemed to be growing faster and thicker as well. His blood pressure was also normal. Unfortunately, he did not share any before or after photos. But, this sounds like the typical side effect from oral minoxidil and even topical application. So I'm speculating that topical minoxidil is being absorbed when ingested. What we are not sure at this moment is the sublingual absorption of topical minoxidil. There are, various factors that go into the absorption rate regarding, solubility in lipids and water, the molecular weight, acid dissociation constant. So, at this point, it's kind of hard to tell without any studies that look into the blood concentrations of minoxidil after topical ingestion. But I think it's logical to state that taking it sublingual is probably the way to go because it avoids first pass metabolism by the liver and potentially avoids destruction by gastric juices in the stomach. Another post that I found on the website Hair Loss Talk involved a 21-year-old guy who was using a combination of different hair loss treatments, including ingesting topical minoxidil. He gives us a brief background on his history of hair loss. He started losing his hair when he was 18, talks a little about his family history of hair loss. He's been taking, 1 milligram finasteride, which he claims has stopped or slowed down his, his hair loss progression. No serious side effects noted. He was using topical minoxidil for about 7 months, but he did stop because he wasn't getting any results and he was just kind of annoyed with daily application of using it topically on his scalp. He's also using Nizer shampoo once a week, in addition to microneedling once a week at 1.5 millimeters. And he did note that he does see blood each time he microneedles. And then finally, we come down to his use of oral liquid minoxidil. So he was taking 20 milligrams of liquid minoxidil for a few days, but he had to stop due to side effects. He then started off with just 10 milligrams, worked his way up to 15 milligrams a week later, followed by 20 milligrams a month later, and now he's at 25 milligrams daily. He does claim that this is the most controversial drug that he's been taking, and he's obviously referencing the ingestion of topical minoxidil. He was considering estrogen, but he didn't go through with it, and was looking into Lonatin, which is the brand name for the oral minoxidil tablet. But given that there was a high possibility of the drug being intercepted by customs, as it wasn't readily available in his country, he looked into drinking liquid minoxidil, and he just decided to give it a try after reading about it from several other hair loss forums. He claimed that drinking minoxidil gave him the best results in terms of hairline recovery, and he also listed some of the side effects he's been having, trichosis, hairy hands, slight facial hair, dark circles, weight gain, which he says that it was attributed due to junk food, but it is also a possibility that it may be due to water retention from the effects of minoxidil. And not surprisingly, he was also having tachycardia, but he no longer has it, and all of the side effects are typical for minoxidil usage. And I think it further validates that oral consumption of liquid minoxidil indeed was being absorbed systemically, at least to a certain degree. So here are some before and after photos he shared with his hair loss treatment involving oral liquid minoxidil. This is his baseline photo. He has hair loss mainly situated to the hairline and temples, and I'd probably place him maybe around like a number 3. And this is his before photos after, or before his treatment of oral minoxidil. We can better visualize the temporal recession on both sides, pretty typical moderate hair loss on the frontal portion of the hairline. And then this is his after results, after all of the said treatment, including ingestion of topical minoxidil. And it looks like there is some improvement to the density and hairline. The hair looks much fuller, I think, and the temples also look better. And we can definitely see trichosis on his forehead and his eyebrows, which is expected, and a lot of vellus hairs that are growing as a result of minoxidil. I will add that he did notice a typical shedding phase from minoxidil, but in this case, in his own words, he said that it was mild. But overall, his results look pretty decent. He definitely was able to get more density thanks to minoxidil. And then he snaps us a photo of his blood pressure to show that everything is normal. So that's pretty much what sums up this video. Just wanted to share something where people would kind of go to the extreme, at least in my opinion, for the sake of hair. And this is especially more concerning because oral minoxidil isn't something you should be messing around with. Same thing with topical minoxidil, especially without the the supervision of your doctor. But it kind of shows the extent that people would go to do whatever it takes for the sake of hair. So let me know your thoughts on the ingestion of topical minoxidil. I just think it's a crazy idea, but I'm sure there are a few of you who are watching my channel who have probably tried this or currently using this as a hair loss treatment regimen. I would love to get your own experience on this. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for all of your support, and I will talk to you guys in my next video. Take care, guys.